Other than the program itself, Chautauqua Lake may be the most significant feature which defines our quality of life and the value of our properties. We drink water pumped and processed from the lake. We swim and boat and fish and view the lake. The lake affects our weather and our mood. We send our waste down the drain and to the wastewater treatment plant, trusting that the lake will withstand the impact of us being here. Chautauqua Lake is impaired. We're required by law to upgrade our waste treatment outcomes. If Chautauqua Lake should become a dead lake, as has happened elsewhere, tourism will suffer, property values will plummet, the institution will lose gate and donor income, and a downward cycle for us is inevitable. C3A advises every property owner to be knowledgeable and participatory in the process of designing and upgrading our wastewater treatment plant. A vote will be taken August 13th by the Chautauqua Utilities District to determine if $408,000 will be spent to design the upgrade as well as to research alternatives. Your Chautauqua Utilities District is ably led by Superintendent Tom Cherry and by a commission which you elect to oversee Tom's budget and operations. I'm going to ask Tom to come up and join me for a discussion and a Q&A with you concerning the engineering plans, the funding process, and the upcoming budget.
Some new property owners in attendance, and they probably don't have a clue what this is about, and that's kind of why I'm here today. It's basically about our beautiful lake and about $6 million boiled down. The history of wastewater treatment is something I've gone into in the past, and I'm not going to revisit that, but in 1893 our founding fathers here at Chautauqua built a wastewater treatment plant because they wanted to protect Chautauqua Lake. We want to do that now too. They spent about $40,000, but that was in 1893, so that was substantial. We're talking about spending a little more than that, and I think it's the right way to go. Some of the facts and background of it stem back to Bill Clinton's EPA. In the 1990s, and by the way, I had some handouts left, but I've only got like a half a dozen of them. I tried to put out these talking points, and I'm not going to read them to you. I think you're probably capable of reading them. This sort of describes what we're trying to get across today, and I thought it would be best to hand it out so you can take it home with you and digest it. It's not that complex, but if you need more of these, I can make them available to you. The talking points are there. A couple of interesting pie charts are in there, and a couple of interesting written charts are in there. Anyway, the reason the EPA started the initiative was because the Chesapeake Bay and the Gulf of Mexico had become impaired. Basically, dead zones had developed in them, and the Mississippi, Potomac, Susquehanna rivers were carrying nutrients, i.e. phosphorus and nitrogen, into the water, similar to the situation we have here at Chautauqua Lake. Their watersheds actually are quite large, and our watershed is part of their watershed. Chautauqua Lake's waters flow to the Ohio and down the Mississippi to the Gulf. Therefore, the EPA, in their initiative, started asking communities on lake bodies to participate in studies and to initiate some activity to reduce phosphorus loading. At this point, they were not talking in the 1990s about nitrogen. They felt that the phosphorus was the limiting factor with the impairment of the water bodies. As you know, nutrient plus sunshine makes vegetation grow, whether it be good vegetation or bad vegetation. and the more nutrient, the more growth. And these include aquatic vegetation and algae, and when they rot and decompose, the dissolved oxygen in the water goes down to the point where it can kill fish. You make a stinking mess out of a pristine body of water with enough nutrient, and we're trying not to do that at Chautauqua Lake. Water quality studies over the last 15 years, and by the way, what did I do with it? This is not a new subject. This is a State of the Lake report from Chautauqua County from 1971, where they determined that phosphorus was a problem in Chautauqua Lake. Anyway, the sources of runoff are varied. They come from anything and everything around the watershed. Of note is the fact that we have non-point sources, which is basically driveways, roadways, buildings, all hard surfaces that run water off. You have areas that have waters that are in streams that are running rainwater and groundwater into Chautauqua Lake. All of these carry nutrient. We also have something that has not been well addressed in the past. Airborne phosphorus, I've mentioned in the past, is substantial, we feel. The newest studies did not address airborne. And I think I know why. We can't do much about it. There is an initiative now by the Obama administration to do away with coal-fired power plants. That'll help. But we can't draw a curtain at the New York state line and say no more air is coming in from the west or the northwest. So I want you to understand, regardless of what we do, there are still sources of phosphorus that we cannot control. And I think that's why the recent studies by New York State DEC did not really address that issue. But it is substantial. A substantial contribution from precipitation. Pardon me. Someone else enjoying the day. We got 181 inches of snowfall this past winter. That was laden with phosphorus too. Our rainfalls are laden with phosphorus. And it all ends up in the watershed and deposited in Chautauqua Lake. Some, not all, some is absorbed by vegetation, trees. The institution's working on that diligently. And thank you for the institution's cooperation and help in all of this. Upper management of Chautauqua Institution has been wonderful with this project we're working on. Okay, as of 2 years ago, DEC initiated a nutrient budget for the lake. What's coming in, where do we reduce the amounts coming in, and they based it on what they call the total maximum daily load, or what I would refer to as TMDL. That's the amount of phosphorus that's coming in, and then they calculate how much phosphorus the lake can handle. We're substantially above what the lake can handle. Each source was given an amount, the wastewater treatment plants being a point source, an easily determinable source of actual measurable phosphorus are the point sources. That's the wastewater treatment plants. Also, we're regulated by DEC, so it's kind of easy for them to grab a hold of us. We don't need a curtain at the state line. All you need is a sample in a laboratory. So as of December 27th, 2012, it took 2 years. The EPA approved the TMDL for Chautauqua Lake. By the way, this is supposed to be something that was going to happen in the very near future 2 years ago. Well, I guess to the bureaucracy, this is a very near future. Anyway, in 2009, DEC required that we perform what they called a CMOM project. And the program involved capacity management, operation, and maintenance. This was basically because we were getting, during rainfalls and snowmelts, we're getting a large amount of water into our 1893 sewer lines. Leakage. Some from downspouts and some pumps and other places, but primarily, I think, from 35 years of chasing this, it's from leakage of the sewer mains. The program says that we have to develop treatment for 3 million gallons as a maximum of water at our wastewater treatment plant. Your normal flows are around 500,000 a day during the summer, during the busiest parts of our summer. So you can see with about an inch of rainfall, we can get up to 1 million gallons extra. 2 inches, we get 2 million extra. Never seen it exceed 3, because our flow meter won't go that high. We're going to solve that too. And then the other thing is we have to do away with chlorine. We can use chlorine for disinfection, which we do. We use bacteria and protozoa, microorganisms, to actually decompose our nutrients and our wastes. And then we don't want to put them out in the lake, so we use chlorine to disinfect with and kill those. And kill the pathogens that may be present too, that could cause disease. And then we keep it to a minimum, but at the same time, they feel that the DEC feels that there's an impact on the lake from the chlorine. So we're either going to have to dechlorinate, or we're going to have to add some other source of disinfection. So we've sort of been studying this a while. We feel that ultraviolet UV disinfection is the way to go. So the CMOM program has been there since 2009, and we have to comply with that, in addition to the other things we're going to have to do. Now, 2 years ago, actually longer ago, but 2 years ago, we actually did a facility plan for our wastewater treatment plant. Our engineers did a diligent job. Due diligence was done. And came up with some options, particularly at the wastewater plant. Some of those have been put aside because of new regulation. In the last 2 years, they determined that we are also going to have to remove ammonia from our waste flow discharge. And by the way, the phosphorus and nitrogen, just so the new people will understand, we don't make that at the sewer plant. It comes to us through those 1893 pipelines, but we do have to cope with it. The plant can cope, as it presently exists, to remove about 50% of the phosphorus and nitrogen that comes down the pipe. We are going to have to reduce that substantially, take out much more, which we have a plan to do. The other thing that we have to do is replace most of the equipment that's 35 years old, was given a 30-year life expectancy when it was put in 1978. It's getting old and tired, somewhat similar to your superintendent who's standing in front of you right now. Anyway, our facility plan could not be engaged until it was approved by New York State DEC, Department of Environmental Conservation. That was done on a schedule that we developed 2 years ago to have it done before this property owner's meeting. And it was approved in May of 2013. And it was approved with the requirement that we satisfy the CMOM capacity management program. The documentation that I need, and that is a new permit telling me exactly in writing in 2 years been 2 years, telling me exactly in writing what I have as far as discharge limits on phosphorus and nitrogen. I've been promised by New York State DEC that it will be delivered to me by August. Well, as Hugh said, we have a vote coming up August 13th, and I'm hoping to have this document in my hand, or at least a draft of it, prior to that vote. But I've been disappointed in the past, so I'm not going to be too encouraged about whether I'll have it in my hand or not. The reason we know that the vote is in August 13th this year is the gentleman who drafted the charter for Chautauqua Utility District back in 1834, it was approved by the New York State Legislature, required that they have a vote on anything of major expenditure when everyone was here. Good idea. So they stated in our charter that the vote has to be the second Tuesday of August. Now, 1934, I'm not sure if they knew when every second Tuesday in August was, but this year it's my birthday. The permit, as I've been told verbally, will require us to remove phosphorus down to 1 part per million for the next 5 years. That's to give us a chance to do what we have to do at the wastewater treatment plant to get it down to where the next permit is going to be issued 5 years from now, to get it down to 0.2, 2/10 of a part per million. That's a substantial reduction. Can be done. We had a plan to do it. We need your support on a yes or no on a proposition to allow us to go to design for the wastewater treatment plant on August 13th. We have done due diligence. I know that for a fact. And we also will be required in the new permit to reduce our ammonia output to 4 parts per million. That can be done also. That's a new item though. Some of our options, we didn't know we were going to have ammonia requirements. Some of our options for this facility plan did not address ammonia. Gee, they were less money. Those options, now that we know we have to reduce ammonia, have kind of been put aside. In addition, we're looking at some other options, and the other options would be to pump our sewage elsewhere. One of them is being encouraged by County Executive Greg Edwards to go to South and Center Sewer Plant in Lakewood, New York. Actually, Celeron, technically. That involves a lot of miles of pipe. The estimates, preliminary estimates from a very minuscule study, I guess is the best way to put it, are $17 million. Now that's not to pick up any septic tanks or septic systems between here and there. That's just to get a pipeline from, I won't go into great detail, just to get a pipeline from the north end of the lake to the South and Center Sewer District. It also would involve a big enough pipeline to ship our 3 million gallons and the North Chautauqua Sewer District's 3 million gallons of rainfall. We're not the only ones that have problems with rainfall. 6 million gallons going down to a facility that was only sized for 6 million gallons is not too great an idea, because they're going to have to do something down there to accommodate that. So the 17 million that I talked about is strictly for a pipeline, a pressure pipeline between Mayville, Chautauqua, and down 394, up and down 394, between here and Lakewood. And then you get into issues about what happens if somebody drills an electric pole down through that 3 o'clock in the morning on a winter's night when someone runs into a pole. Anyway, lots of questions, lots of unanswered questions, and I guess that's our biggest discomfort with this. There's a lot of unanswered questions we don't have the answers for. The other option is we've been looking at is to pump our sewage to Westfield. Westfield lost one of their large customers, Welch's, a number of years ago. They could use the revenue. We just got a report from our engineers yesterday. This is how current this stuff's going on. We received it yesterday, studying the option of going to Westfield. The pipeline alone to Westfield is also $17 million. They would have to do some work down there, including a pipe right down the middle of 394 through the middle of town. We feel that's going to cost more money to do than 17 million, probably another 5 million. So we're at 22 million. No real estimate on what it would take to do the South and Center Sewer District and Celeron Lakewood. And I guess that's one of the other issues. They have a study going on right now about capacity management at their plant in Celeron. We're supposed to get that information before our August vote too. But we're looking about, I'd say probably close to 25 to 30 million, we estimate, to do the pipeline and to go to South and Center. There's been some discussion about funding. Some of that is very up in the air too. Consolidation funding program is available through New York State. It's like 85% local, 15% state participation. I think that's enough about that. Our estimates are between 5 million and 7 million, closer to 6 is what we're talking about for the upgrades to our wastewater treatment plant. We'll have a better idea after we get a design done and we can go to competitive bids and actually get hard numbers for your vote on that, yes or no. Anything over $100,000 has to be voted on by the property owners here in Chautauqua. That was another little thing that was stuck in there in our original charter. Good idea. So I guess I'm going to wind this down and say in August, on the 13th, we're going to put a proposition out there, and there was 50 sample ballots out there. I don't know if you need any more. We can make all of this information available to you. Please don't be confused by the pie charts that I put in that handout. They're strictly for your information, and they are a bit confusing. There's two pie charts because there are basically two separate lakes here, the northern basin and the southern basin. The chemistry involved in those is substantially different. Pardon me. And the upshot of the deal is that the nutrients that are contributed by the North Basin substantially increase the nutrients that are in the South Basin because that's the way the water flows. And the different aspects involved with this on a typewritten chart, the upper of the two charts that are in there. Are put in there so you can determine the numbers from the pie charts were drawn from those facts. The lower of the two indexed results was from State of the Lake report, which was published in 2001, so you could compare the two. To note, there are substantial volumes of airborne phosphorus in the one from the State of the Lake report. Not so much in the one from DEC's current report. So at that, I think, Hugh, I'm sure there's questions.
Sure there are too. It is a big subject, and we are reinforcing this plan here to spend the next 30 days getting you educated, familiar with this issue and the alternatives before the vote comes. You're welcome to approach the microphones and ask Tom a question. I'll start with one. You talk about us spending $6 million of our own compared to 17 million, 25 million, 30 million in concert with other people around the lake. Do we gain anything if we pitch our 6 million in, or is it likely to be 10 million or 15 million that we'll end up spending for the decibel?
That's one of the myriad of questions that we have no answer to. The county executive said he was going to try to have our contribution be only the $6 million. So it would be either the sewer plant or the pipeline would cost you $6 million. Well, then the question is, where else does the rest of the money come from? I think we know, but I'm not sure.
Or we pass the hat, or we... okay, one other question, and we'll take it from the microphone. This $408,000 you want us to vote on next month, where's that money coming from?
Well, I don't know if you were here when we had a discussion the last time about a 2% tax cap. But at the same time we had this mandate to do the sewer plant, we got a mandate that we could only raise our taxes by 2% per year. State of New York, state of New York. This. Anyway, what we did at that point when we knew this was coming, we started raising our tax levy by 2% and put the money aside for the $408,000. So we have that on hand. We have those dollars.
So we won't see a rate hike as a result of that. Okay, great. Let's start over here. Go ahead.
First, I want to make a comment that I'm David Goldberg from Crescent, 54 Crescent, totally supportive of assessments that we're, as property owners, we're going to pay. And I'm very happy that the people leading this effort are very knowledgeable. Two questions. You sort of just started to answer this, I need more clarification. I understand property owners have the major burden, but there are, the institution itself is going to be a beneficiary. There's lots of not-for-profits that are beneficiary. There's people that use the lake that aren't paying. So the disproportionate burden on homeowners and property owners that might never only look at the lake. How is the sharing, the actual going to come down to who's going to add treatment plants on the lake, which are all woefully inadequate. And if we do everything 100% here, the lake, and they don't do anything, unless the EPA really comes down on everybody else with a huge pressure, doesn't do anything. Should money be raised to make sure that we are an advocate of helping to push the EPA to make sure our neighbors do theirs? Because for us to do it means nothing. The lake will be the same.
Two good questions. One of those treatment plants is not woefully inadequate. Yours. It does a pretty good job. It was never designed to take out phosphorus and nitrogen. We remove about 50% of it now. And we're actually, this year, we're initiating a program to get up to that 1 part per million that we're going to have to be for the next 5 years. We've already started that. Get down to 1 part per million. The question about picking up additional waste around the lake, we're talking right now about a consolidation program that does not involve a pipeline per se, that each one of the wastewater plants could accept more sewage from outside of our districts. And one of those districts is the North District, and they're talking about going around the north end of the lake and picking up some of those wastewater treatment plants and incorporating that into their new plant, which will have phosphorus removal. Your second question, and I'm available to discuss this with any of you whenever you want to talk about it. I'd rather talk to you individually than stand up here and do this, but either way. The second half is we have something called an ad valorem tax. Chautauqua Institution will participate, and not-for-profits will participate. The church groups will participate. Everyone will participate in an ad valorem tax. Everybody's assessed value may not be the same, but we're talking about doing this through an ad valorem tax. We had a choice of doing it through water and sewer rates, sewer rates, not water rates. That's my standard, water and sewer, water and sewer. The sewer rates would go up by 400%. We thought that was a little bit too much of an impact. And in doing so, the institution's bills would have gone up 400%. I don't think you need that. What I did too, and I ran some numbers, and these are not hard and fast numbers. We don't have any hard and fast numbers. We got pretty good estimates. But if we borrow $6 million over the life expectancy of the facility, we'll amortize it for 30 years. And if the interest rate's 5%, I wish we could do it right now. But by the time we get done messing around with this, we don't know where the interest rates are going to be. We would have to raise $500,000 a year in addition in our tax levy. We have 1,400 customers. If you divide 1,400, and this is just an average now, there are properties, as you know, worth more and worth less than the average. If you do the math, it's around $357 a year per property. Closer to 4 probably by the time we get done. But that's what we're looking at, and that's the direction we're going, I hope.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the institution would be part of that scheme as well. Also, as to the other point sources around the lake, if they don't act, they get fined. Just like we do. Ultimately, if we don't act, the EPA has regulatory authority. They will act. There will be a way to do that. Go ahead, sir.
I think my question was partially answered, which is for the $6 million, how does that work out for, say, $100,000 of assessed value or $200,000 of assessed value? In other words, if you own a $200,000 condominium here, how much, what is the $6 million?
We did some numbers when we did the water plant. That was 9 years ago. Pardon me, but 9 years have gone by. I was thinking we did numbers around $191 or something like that per household based on $400,000 a year, I think, average household. Don't hold me to that.
That was 9 years ago.
That was 9 years ago, and frankly, this doesn't work as well as it used to.
Just a suggestion then, sometime in the next 30 days, if you could let the property owners know, based on an assessed value, what it will go up, or what the $6 million means, it may make a difference to some.
I'm willing to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You understanding that this engineering work does not presuppose or commit us to a bond or anything, but it's good. It's good information, and the commissioners are working. Thanks.
Good morning. Thank you for the work that you guys are doing. It's a lot of work. I'm Martha Wright, 26 Wall. I have 2 questions. One is that if we commit to the $6 million ostensibly, the second question is about knowing the total to some level, because it's really hard to vote on a partial cost without understanding what you're getting into. So if there's some way to guesstimate or estimate
How much money you're going to be asked to vote on the next time, you're not committing to $6 million. You're only committing for design of a $6 million facility. We will know better after we get the design what the costs are going to be, whether they're going to be closer to 6 or 5 or 7 or whatever. And then, I'm sorry, but you'll see my face again in probably a year and a half or 2. Well, it's going to have to be a year or 2 years with those numbers for you to vote on again. We can't spend over $100,000 without your approval. So. There are some very important questions involved with the pipeline issue. And I don't think there's any way that we're going to get too many of those questions answered prior to this August. And maybe not prior to next August. But we have a commitment to the state and federal government to correct our problem with phosphorus and nitrogen at the plant within the next 5 years. The clock is ticking. So if you put your apples in that cart and go to the pipeline and it doesn't pan out for funding, or it doesn't pan out for cooperation between the townships involved, we still have to solve our problem here at this wastewater plant in 5 years. So that's the direction we're diligently going forward.
But if we spend the 408,000, can we commit independently to spend the 6 million or whatever it's going to cost? Or can we get overridden politically by other interests?
That we cannot get overridden.
Okay,
The only thing that we can get overridden by is New York State
okay,
and the legislature.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Over here,
I'm
Nancy.
Nancy Karp. I live here year-round on Mine Edison. And I don't have a question, I have a comment. For those of you who do not know either Tom Cherry or the people on your utility commission, I would like to tell you that I would trust not only my sewage and my dollars, but actually have, in some cases, trusted my life with them. So I'm very supportive. I know how many meetings, I know how hard they work, I know the stress that they put in for us. And so I'm just telling you that these folks are the real thing, and I appreciate everything they do.
We're pretty happy to work with Tom and the commissioners as well, and CPA will try to gather all these facts, and you are all welcome to contact us directly, cpoarepresentative@gmail.com, or talk to any of us about this issue. Let's try to get ready for this August 13 vote. It doesn't, as we say, it doesn't commit us to go any further than the engineering design study, but it gets us a step more knowledgeable about our alternatives, and we're doing due diligence to make sure that all the facts are available as they can be available. If one of the things that's up in the air, one of the many things up in the air is grant possibilities. You make your own guess about how well that'll go, but we have to give it a shot. Your commissioners are doing everything, working with Tom to get this funded and get this job done. It needs to be done. Margie?
Hi, I'm Margie Bucksbaum, and Tom is my hero. I have a question to ask about, I'm not sure I'm wording this just right, but there's sort of a principle about transferring water from one basin, watershed basin, to another. And if you went to Celeron, that would be in the same water basin. But if you went to Westfield, you're over the hill and into Lake Erie Basin. So doesn't that idea sort of fly in the face that you're transferring, a huge body of water from the Chautauqua Lake Basin to Lake Erie Basin?
I actually like the idea of sending our sewage to Lake Erie. Somebody pointed out that they didn't think that was a neighborly thing to do. I don't know. I'm not sure what to say about that. It seemed like a good idea.
Marjorie, that's a great question. I like you pretty well too. And I did not plant that question. Maybe somebody did, but Hugh said he did. 2 years ago, I asked New York State DEC, when we were looking at these alternatives, if it would work to move water from one watershed to another watershed. I got a lot of silence for a while. I pushed a little more, and we got a notice from Albany that said there is a vehicle in place to do that and keep track of it, because we already have a permit to withdraw water for the water plant from the watershed. We actually return it through the wastewater plant, but we have a permit with DEC to withdraw water from this watershed and use it or misuse it, however you want to put it. I asked again about a year ago, a little more emphatically. I need a yes or no in writing before we do this. I have not gotten a yes or no in writing. I'm sorry. I won't apologize for DEC, but I'm a pessimist. I've become a pessimist, particularly with bureaucracies. I don't think we're going to know until we try to do it, and then they'll probably say no.
Just a comment, as president of the Chautauqua Bird Tree and Garden Club, as you all know, we have lake walks every Monday afternoon at about 4:15, and they are all designed to educate people about the condition of our lake and the biology of our lake, and so we invite everybody to join us. Watch the paper for the next meeting location. Thank you, Tom.
6:30, Monday nights, along the lake.
6:30, thank you.
6:30, Monday nights.
And who's doing that?
The Bird Tree and Garden Club, and sometimes you.
It's me.
Yeah, we've got time for one short question, then we'll turn it over to the trustees.
Just a short question. If you go the pipeline route, what happens to the existing plant? Is that building and is that space released? And does the institution have a particular interest in getting the plant off the ground or using it for something else, or are they indifferent?
The existing facility, current assessed value is $4 million. The existing facility is still capable of doing things as we're talking about doing this. If the pipeline were to be established and the 2 wastewater plants were to be done away with, you're still going to have some very large pump stations at each facility here and in Mayville. Those are going to have to be maintained and manned. So personnel-wise, you're still going to have a couple of guys down there. We've got 3 now. I'm one of them. And we have a trainee down there, because some of us are talking about retirement someday. And the other thing you're going to have is a facility that can retain these high flows until they can be pumped. So you're going to have what they call an overflow retention facility down there, which is going to be a very large tank, about 1 million gallon capacity, and it's going to have sewage coming and going, and it's going to have a certain amount of hygienic work done to it on a regular basis. You got to clean the thing out. I mean, you don't want to have a stinking mess down there. So even though the pipeline would go in, there are some significant responsibilities here for that.
We take seriously our participation in the county, and so we continue to meet with people, and Tom and the commission continues to meet with the county executive. If there's a way to do something that's good for Chautauqua Lake or Chautauqua County, and it's feasible for us to participate, then I think we have to consider it. This vote on August 13th, again, is a utility district vote, so the method will be prescribed, it will be announced. We will have time next month on August 10th, the Saturday before that vote, to discuss one more time how it's to be taken, how you participate, sample ballots, and so forth. So you will get more information as the next 30 days elapses. And I believe that's traditionally taken in the colonnade, is it, Bob? So that there's actually an election day on the Tuesday, and each registered property owner goes and appears and casts a vote. So we'll have more on that as time lapses. In the meantime, I'd like to thank Tom Cherry and everyone for participating, and turn this over to George Snyder.
One more word, I want to thank the Property Owners Association, and particularly Hugh Butler, who has been tremendous help on this. Thank you for your support.